Welcome to Conversations with Personal Finance Champions. Here we talk with leaders advancing economic empowerment through financial education. Today we have a great guest, Susan Doty. Susan, if you've been in the space for a while, you know Susan. She's been doing some excellent things for over 30 years. I just learned this right now, 3 decades in the space. She's an award-winning teacher. She served over 8,000 students, and she's been doing some wonderful things at the Center for Economic Education and Financial Literacy at the University of Texas, Tyler. And I can say a lot of things about Susan. You'll learn a lot about her through this. But one thing is, when we had our first conversation, I love conversations like Susan because she was talking about student outcomes, her vision, and looking to build her legacy that will carry on in perpetuity, serving students and the community. So without further ado, welcome, Susan.
I'm so happy to be here, Vince. Thank you.
You know, I know a lot about your program. I know a lot about your vision moving forward, but I'm really curious about your background. What led you here? What was your experience like? And why are we talking here today?
Oh, well, it was as they say, a long, strange road. I'm not a traditional academic. I have, as you say, been in this space now for going on 4 decades, but I had a first career in the biotechnology industry. And so I really came out of a biology background long before I went into a business background and was in industry before I came to academia. So a long journey.
Very long. And what stemmed your passion? I mean, what was a root passion for being involved in economic education and financial literacy? What led you here?
Well, when I started teaching at the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, there was a course at that time called Economics for Educators. And if I remember correctly, it was a required course for every K-12 teacher in Arkansas at the time. So, like we said before, this is going back into the early 90s. But I taught that course and became a believer. Would have to say that that's really where it started. It was a course that combined pedagogy with content, and it was one that enabled teachers to find ways to integrate economics and personal finance into everything they taught. And as I said before, I became a believer during that time and then went on to do similar work at other universities. I started a Center for Economic Education at the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg, and we became a very active center there. And initially, my focus really was on economic education. And I was on the faculty in economics in both of those places. And I had a state council president in Mississippi who wanted to change the focus of some of the courses that we were teaching to K-12 teachers. And she wanted me to use a new curriculum, which at that time was put out by the Council for Economic Education in New York. And that curriculum was called, I'm trying to think of what it was right now, and I've forgotten the name of it, and I'm embarrassed by that, but give me a minute and it'll come to me. But at any rate, I looked at the curriculum and I said, oh my goodness, don't you want me teaching AP economics to these teachers? Let me teach AP macro and AP micro and help them with those courses. And she was like, no, I want this personal finance course. And I thought at the time, oh my goodness, this is so simple. And then I started teaching it. And when we launched it, this must have been back in, I don't know, about 2005. And when we launched it, we did a tour through Mississippi. So this Yankee was learning her way around because, if it was Tuesday, it must be Tupelo. It was that kind of a tour. And teachers came up to me after the workshops and they hugged me. And they said things like, not only do my students need this, but I needed this. Thank you so much for this study. It's going to benefit them, but it's also going to benefit my family, is what they said to me. And they said it often with tears. I mean, this is a very emotional response to a professional development workshop. I didn't ever get those kind of responses after AP Economics.
True.
So anyway, I became, once again, a believer in the power of financial education. And so when I got to Texas in 2009, I started another center here, the Center for Economic Education and Financial Literacy at the University of Texas at Tyler, which is what, you said earlier. We're going to shorten that to CFL, and it will be easier for both of us to talk about. But in that time, you talked about the number of undergraduate students who I've taught, but I've also taught over 2,500 teachers out of this center.
That's interesting. I've had a similar experience with teachers. We'll go in for professional development on training them to teach personal finance, and yet they're asking questions about their own personal financial situation. And it's hard to kind of keep them on track. I'm here tasked with teaching you about how to teach the kids, and it's hard to keep that focus there, but I can definitely sense the passion. I relate to that very much. So it sounds like that might have been those responses you received from the teachers may have been a real lit the fire for personal finance with you. Is that
It did. If you are, as I know you are, motivated by teaching and seeing the fruits of your labor in the students that they teach and in the students that you teach, it's just very powerful.
Isn't it amazing how money and emotions have that much of a direct relationship? I know, just thinking about my own academic career, I didn't really have that training, no personal finance classes. And yet it's so different than most classes. You being in the education field for so long, do you know of any other type of coursework or classes that kind of has that emotional responses and draws out there? I'm curious.
Well, I need to go back to the economics because I think that's where it all starts. And, I will begin almost every principles course every semester asking, doing like a word cloud with something like Mentimeter. And I'll ask students what word they most think of when they think of economics. And they all answer money. And then I say, no, wrong. Economics is about choice. So the way I teach personal finance and the way I always have taught personal finance is to wrap it around the economic way of thinking. Okay, so if you'll allow me, I do this silly thing that students have come to call the Doty Mantra because I say it so often. But if you'll allow me to do it here, this is the way I frame whatever it is that I'm going to teach. Everything we value is scarce. Because everything we value is scarce, we can't have it all. Because we can't have it all, we have to make choices. Every choice we make means giving up something else. That most valued alternative we give up when we make a choice is our opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is the real cost of our choices. So when you look at a personal finance program, whether it's investing in ourselves and earning income, or budgeting to save and spend, protecting and insuring credit and debt, financial markets and financial investing, or giving back with service, charity, philanthropy, those are all choice points. And so setting it up, at the front end as a way of thinking, as a way of prioritizing is, I think, what turns people on to the hows of personal finance, because it underscores at the front end the importance of the why.
I love that. I think it's the thing I love most about it, besides being very clear and giving people a vision of what you're going to be talking about, is I can tell you put a lot of time into thinking that through. And I think that's a critical skill set of advanced financial educators, where they're making things unique, bringing in their persona, bringing in their past knowledge and experience into being able to construct a paragraph that wraps up a course the way you did so succinctly, so that you can tell early on, a lot of people are reading curriculum and going through the steps, and that's a good learning stage. But I can tell as you advance, you're bringing your own persona and your uniqueness there. So I can tell that's well thought out. And for everybody,
you can't teach it if you can't put it on one page.
Very good point. Yes, and for everybody listening, I say rewind this about 2 minutes, listen to that about 5 or 6 times, let that sink in. Some gold nuggets there, so thank you for that. And that kind of leads us into your program now. Your first responder finance program. It's an amazing program, really setting the bar high for other colleges. And just tell us a little bit about that, how that came to fruition, and your goals there.
Okay, I love that you say for other colleges, because this is really where my heart is I want to see what we have done at the University of Texas at Tyler replicated universities really everywhere. So the 8,500 undergraduate students who I teach are, from all different majors. I not only teach the economics students and the business students, but I also teach students, in computer science and engineering and history and political science. And they always come out of economics classes wanting personal finance. Okay. And so I started teaching a personal finance course. And when I initially launched it, it was a course for working professionals who were coming back to school. It's really a degree completion program, and they were coming back to school after years, sometimes decades. They had hit a ceiling in their careers, and so they were coming back to get bachelor's degrees. And I prepared this online personal finance course in a 7-week format, pretty much following that program that I mentioned to you before. So the 7 components that I talked about: the economic way of thinking, invest in yourself, earn income, budgeting to spend and save, all of those categories that I gave you a few minutes ago. And so one of those in each week. And so it's a pretty intense course. And I was teaching often, up to 120 students online in 7 weeks in this non-traditional program. And it was a bear in a lot of ways for all the challenges you can probably think of. But what was uniform across that course every semester was these adult learners who were saying to me, why didn't I learn this earlier in my life? Why didn't I have this in a high school class? Why didn't I have it earlier in my college career? Why did I have to learn through life mistakes, and to come to this point where, let's say, at 40 years old, I'm taking this course with you and realizing how much control I could have had I known more. And so that group of really challenging students just, I guess, raised my passion for this. I served on a committee at the University of Texas system level. It was Chancellor's Committee to promote student success. And we looked at really multiple areas which could hang students up in their undergraduate education. And, one was belonging and one was advising, but one was money. Okay. And so we made the recommendation at that time, I think this was probably about 2017, to make personal finance a required course in every UT system university. And it did not pass. And so that was disappointing. But that's what led to it becoming an integral part of this one program at UT Tyler. And so I've just realized that I had to do more than just this one program. And so that meant bringing it to the traditional students, if there is any such thing, the full-time undergraduate students, many of whom were not working or only working part-time, but they were often just out of high school.
Okay.
And so I kind of reorganized the course for those students. Initially, they were finance students, they were econ students, they were business students. But again, I wanted to reach more. And some interesting things happened about all the same time. One of them was that NEFI, the National Endowment for Financial Education, published a white paper, a brief, on the importance of teaching personal finance to social workers. And the argument that they put forward was, we know that teaching teachers works. Why don't we use the same train the trainer, teach the teacher, educate the educator model that works so well in P20, K-12 extended on both ends, to social workers? So I saw that, and that's in the back of my mind for a couple interesting reasons. One of them is at UT Tyler, economics is in the College of Arts and Sciences, in the Department of Social Sciences. It's not in the College of Business, where it is in about, half of universities. Beyond that, in the College of Arts and Sciences here at UT Tyler, in social sciences, we're a very diverse department. And we have criminal justice, we have sociology, anthropology, geography, econ, of course, but we also launched a new social work program. So all of this was happening about the same time. And I was on the search committees for our new faculty in social work as we were preparing that program. And I asked the same question to each of the candidates, and that was, what is the single greatest problem that your client families have, that the client families that your future students, your future graduated social workers will have with their clients? And they all answered the same thing without hesitation. They all answered money, financial problems. And so then I went to the criminal justice folks and asked the same thing of the law enforcement professionals. And, when you look underneath the crime statistics, what is a commonality? And again, it's financial problems. And just to add one more piece to this, we merged with the Health Science Center and launched a new medical school here at UT Tyler. So we had all of the health professionals coming out dealing with people with stress-related financial conditions and monetary concerns. So at any rate, all of those things came together as a perfect storm, if you will. And that was a very long-winded response to what is first responder finance.
I just want to break down a few things I love there. Hey, there was a setback you had. I mean, we wanted this across all UT schools. Many would have seen that as setback, say, hey, forget it. You dug in, you looked for different ways. You did a needs assessment, and intentionally maybe it started, but it was a needs assessment, asking those people you were interviewing, what's the number one problem people are facing in your line of work? And you found a common theme. So I think that's, from a foundational perspective of building any type of program, that needs assessment is critical. And I know continue, but I think for everybody listening, you need to listen to the people, all different stakeholders, whoever you're dealing with. Oh, Susan was interviewing people for a role, right? You might be working with an organization, but that needs assessment is critical. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think it's critical information that you shared.
Well, and you're right. I didn't call it that. I don't know that as this was starting to form in my mind that I was really thinking of it in that way, but it led me to becoming more deliberate and to, putting together a logic plan, if you will, about how all of this was going to work. And so fast forward to about 2023, and first responder finance really started coming together. And what it is now is a program with 3 tiers, okay? And in the first tier, we created 3 new courses at the University of Texas at Tyler. So those courses are personal finance economics, building financial resilience across the wealth spectrum, and then an experiential learning internship course, if you will, in personal finance. So the 3 courses now taken in succession will lead to a first responder finance certificate that goes on undergraduate student transcripts. So,
wow.
Yeah. So,
I haven't heard of this at any other.
Oh, you had not heard that. Okay.
Yeah, I knew you had one, but from looking at the country, do you know anybody else that has a 4-credit certification program that's recognized? I have not seen that.
I have not seen that.
It's sad, right? It's sad, but it's awesome for you. And that's a huge, that's amazing. I think
what it is awesome for our students who come through with it.
Very true.
Because in a time when we are, thinking more and more about the value of higher education, and when we are looking at ways to make our students more prepared for and more valuable in the workplace, you think of, who we are serving with this first responder finance program. And it is, of course, the students who are going to go into financial advising and banking and insurance and real estate. So it's capturing those students, but it's also capturing those who are going into law enforcement and social work and education and healthcare. And so we are really casting a pretty broad net with this program, and it's being very well received, not just by the econ students and the finance students and even the teachers. It is being embraced by students across our colleges and across our majors. And, something we do in higher education is we talk a lot about interdisciplinary activities, but this is truly one.
And it's interesting across all those professions you mentioned, from the financial side, law enforcement, to social work, healthcare. A lot of those employers hiring those people are doing more extensive background checks as well, credit and other things, because there's
Yeah.
some security risk in some of the roles there. So I think from a standpoint of, there's other classes that will help them build the skill sets and so forth to be, competent in their abilities on the job. But this is foundational for them to get the job. If they don't have these skill sets, hey, you make a few credit mistakes, you're labeled a security risk, right? So I think this is proactively looking, addressing a common issue people face in a way that's going to help them long term and across other areas of their life as well. But I love that it's gotten so much adoption across the campus and these various goals that students have.
So that is the, remember I said there were 3 tiers. So this is the first tier, is teaching the undergraduate students and those 3 courses and then the certificate. And that first course, the personal finance economics course, stands on its own, and if I have, a big goal, a big dream, here it is that every student will take that course. And then the ones who go on into the helping professions will take the additional 2 and get their certificate. But phase 2 of first responder finance is outreach to professionals, because the people who are already out there serving in those helping professions did not have the opportunity to take personal finance as part of their professional training or their undergraduate education. And so we have been doing professional development workshops for social workers, for teachers, for financial advisors, for all of these first responders that we've been talking about. And that, again, has spread a pretty wide net. I've had a couple interesting groups just this spring. One of them was a group of CPAs and lawyers who do fraud investigation. And the gist of that PD session was, why do we focus so desperate people do desperate things? Why do we focus so much on catching after the fact? What about employee financial wellness programs, which could help to keep the desperation from occurring in the first place? And so, that's been interesting. Talking to, social workers about how they deal with the kinds of problems their clients have. And then in Texas, I'm sure you're aware that we are very excited that new legislation passed in this last legislative session to finally make a required standalone personal finance course. We've had it integrated lots of different places, in the K-12 curriculum, but now it's going to be required for students coming in fall of 25 to take a personal finance course before they graduate. So that's exciting in terms of what's coming down the pipeline. And it also strengthens the need for professional development for our educators in Texas. Okay, and then very quickly, I'll tell you the third tier of this, which is outreach to the community. And so what I have been doing is including my students and my teachers and the professionals who I work with in outreach activities for families, individuals, families, and communities. So we've been doing things like family financial fun nights, Girl Scout personal finance badges, a lot of wonderful activities that bring all of these budding professionals into the community to give back.
That's awesome. I love that. The foundation, the levels. First off, it's very well thought out, constructed, and I just am impressed across the board on that. Now, is that third level? They're going out in the community, educating just various groups and organizations, individuals. That's the vision there.
That is certainly the plan.
Mhm.
Okay, and you know that I am currently running a cohort through your CFEI program to help prepare them to go out into the community and teach. But some of these activities that I'm talking about are more one-off kinds of activities. So, for example, a family financial fun night would bring in elementary or middle school or high school students with their parents, and they would go through a series of stations with their parents. Again, those 6 or 7 categories that I talked about earlier, an activity, a station activity for each one of those. And by not only encouraging, but sort of enforcing the students and their parents traveling together through the stations, it sparks conversations at home after the fact. So there is follow-up, and that's what we want to see, a continuation of whatever it is that we do the initial outreach for.
Yeah, I love that. And going back to what you said earlier about the Texas mandates leading up to this, I think you're in a good position, maybe collaboration position, with making sure teachers are educated. The sad thing is there's no requirements of training for teachers still. No performative assessments. There's limited funding. They're pulling from other departments, which always causes fights, right? There's always, hey, I don't want to give up that money. So I think, hey, if we can, work to, with empowering your people to get out there, get educated on how to teach, and then going into these schools and providing that support for these teachers, because as you said at the beginning, many teachers don't know about their own personal finance. When you're teaching a subject like English that you've taught for, you went to school for 20 years for it, you taught it for 20 years, there's some confidence, right? Now they say, hey, go teach personal finance. Like, that's new. So I think you're in great position to really support that community. But I love all those steps, from the foundational steps on. Now, early on, you couldn't do this without working towards some funding, right? And I know that's always a big challenge for a lot of groups out there that are trying to get these programs started. I think it took 2 things that are sometimes challenging. One is buy-in from the college. The college seems very supportive, which is amazing, unique. I'll get into a story here in a minute that will describe what the average college we work with is like. And then the funding side, how do we fund and expand that? And you worked from that grant from the bottom up in building this program. And so you weren't handed this, you built everything from ground up. Can you tell us a little bit about that grant process, kind of important tips for people that are looking to get grants, maybe you're nonprofits and other universities looking to get grants? Maybe if you could share some insight there, if that would be helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So it's worth reminding ourselves here that I came out of industry. So, so I have a background in fundraising. I have a background in marketing and business development, and those things have certainly informed my teaching over the years, but they have especially allowed me to be successful with 2 different centers and raising money for those centers. And I think that often educators are not comfortable with the idea of raising money for the things that they do. And there are so many philanthropists out there and giving organizations who want to fund valuable programs. And I don't know of many stories that pull at heartstrings the way that money stories do, that personal finance stories do. There are funders who believe in the importance of personal finance. So you've got to be credible, you've got to have a good plan, and you've got to find the people who care about what you're doing and ask them to help you. And then involve the ones who want to be involved and report to the ones who want to be at a distance. But you need a compelling story. You need a track record, and you need to show them an actionable plan.
I remember from one of our earlier conversations, you were always looking for ways to over-deliver on the line items required by the grant. That's a standout. That will get refunded, refunding much easier. So, but yeah, for those of you that don't have that background in industry or that knowledge, there's other ways you can do that too. Just a quick aside, by partnering with nonprofits and other groups that have that experience, and you're bringing your experience teaching personal finance. So you're leveraging their strengths, they're leveraging yours. That's how we worked early on, because it is a unique skill set. Not everybody has, years in industry and fundraising like Susan does. But where there's a will, there's a way. But that is a great tip and strategy. And
the piece that, excuse me, Vince, I didn't mean to speak over you there.
Oh, no problem. I'll follow your lead. Yeah.
The universities have a unique opportunity to do quality research as well. And I think that one of the areas where our field in general, our personal finance field, needs more quality research is a piece that the universities can bring to this. Now, I'm not a researcher. It's not what I do, but I partner with people who are. I have tremendous colleagues who have skills in that area. And I think we have watched the personal wellness landscape change as the research has gotten better and better in this area. I think that we are focusing far less now on what people know as what people do. So we are looking very specifically for behavioral change. And so that goes, that's a change from did you enjoy this workshop to what are you going to do differently after this workshop?
Big change.
And then follow up at time sequences to say, this is what you said you were going to do. Did you do it? And then to look at objective metrics that can be things like, what is your credit score now? What is your credit score 6 months from now? What is your emergency savings now? What is it 6 months from now? What is your confidence level now? There's a lot that, we could have been doing and weren't doing in the personal finance assessment space. And I think that you and your organization has been banging on that drum, and I think people are really listening now.
It's one that, it's so different than most subjects. It's most subjects you do a post-test. Okay, you know the math, you memorize the dates, you know how to speak Spanish, at least at this level, right? With personal finance, it's just so different. So many unique measurements, bridges the behavioral sentiment, the actual processes, the systems. If the outcomes is the holy grail, right? If we're proving outcomes, that's wonderful. And to your point too, I think, for colleges, that's a great way to be involved. Still we're not seeing a lot come out of academia, with the exception of your organization there, and also government organizations. There's 10 agencies, government agencies, that all have random curriculum, but nobody's producing. It's like there's plenty of people that have curriculum, but they could be leveraged for data and information that can move this industry forward and really help to build out that infrastructure. There's a huge lack of that. I think the last significant report was from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau back in 2013, I believe 2012. And that was the real last significant report that gave an overview of the industry and so forth. And there's just it's a desert of data. We have nothing in this industry, and it impacts 100% of our citizens, 100% of people. Everybody here listening, it's impacting you, and there's no data on that, which is sad. But yeah, very good point to that. And the other thing I love, that you're doing is how you've been able to work with the college. Now, I know they're very progressive in the sense of, hey, they're looking out for students. I see a lot. I was on their website earlier. They're doing a lot of great, unique programs. I think you're at a very unique college, but other people are looking to work with colleges. And I'll just share a story with you just to highlight how different your program is than most. I talk with maybe 100 plus universities a year, and I always go to their website before. And if they have a program, typically it's a well built out web page that highlights what they're doing in financial literacy. So I'm excited when I get on the phone. And I get on the phone or Zoom with them, and I'm like, okay, tell me about this. So it looks like you're doing some wonderful things. It sounds like you're making a real difference. And they'll be like, yeah, we do a workshop every semester. Okay, how long is that? Oh, 60 minutes, one time. Oh, okay. And you put 10 grand into this website, and then they're looking for like a speaker for like that hour. I'm like, okay, how are you marketing? Oh, we put it in the newspaper, and that's it once, or some random thing. There's a lack of real programs like you guys have. And so for those people that want to work with colleges and help them elevate what they're doing, what do you think would be the best departments to talk to? What do you think would be the best way for them to navigate? Just some insight, since you've had experience across many different colleges, just any tips or insight for them.
Well, you've got to have a champion. And so we can't underestimate that. You can't just, put these courses, get them, run them through the approval cycle, get them into the course catalog, and then hire someone to teach them. I think you need a champion who builds the program. And, I get accused of, being on message all the time about personal finance, but I think that's what it takes. It's you've got to find a passionate advocate, and then you need to partner with people. And so that you have to find the pockets all over campus who are interested in this. You need to find the leaders in both the private sector and not-for-profits in the community who are in this space, and talk about collaborating. And you got to be persuasive in that, and you got to put in the time, and you've got to recruit the students, and the students have to be convinced, and I'm going to say that's the expression I use, so I'm going to hold on to it, but they need to be convinced in the truest terms, in the most honest terms, yes, that this is life-changing. There is no lack of content out there. In fact, my students just did a reflection about how much content is there. And so the question I asked them, with all of these programs and all of this content and materials that are available, why do we still have these abysmal financial literacy scores?
Mm-hmm.
And it's goes back to something that you said earlier, Vince. It has to do with behavioral change. It has to do with psychological commitment to what is an ongoing process. It's not, like you said, a subject where you learn it and move on from it.
True.
Okay, it's constant. It has to be reinforcing, and so I don't see this as being something where universities can just adopt a financial wellness program and put it on their website, and, as you say, do spend an hour each semester talking about it. This, and then we check a box that says we have it. No, this has to be an ongoing reinforcing program so that students say, I want this, I need this, I am so glad to be taking this, at a minimum, for themselves. And then you look for the true believers who say, and then I want to pass it on and multiply this. My tagline on my email, and I know you've seen it, is education is the ultimate economic multiplier. And I believe that.
True.
And so, my personal goal is to create an army of people who are going out and helping others make better financial decisions.
I love it. I want to break down a few things there. Focus on convince first. That's a very important term. It's not, if you're giving away like pizza or something, they're convinced for the pizza, not for the class, right? And we see that time and time again. Give free pizza. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about money, right? No, it's, hey, here's what money can do for you. Here's how it relates to your life. Everything you're doing and studying college is for money in one way or another. Get a better job to get money, right? So yeah, we need to convince them of what their why, as you said. Again, I'm taking words out of your mouth here, but that's such a key and critical element. The reason people want to learn, if they don't have a reason, they're not going to go to learn. And you don't want a bunch of people there just for free pizza. So that's a great point. In terms of navigating the college system, awesome advice. Find that champion. Find that Susan at a college near you that's just passionate about this. Maybe they don't have a program started, but when you talk to them, they're saying, "Oh, this is important. I've had these experiences. I think this would be important to bring to students." Bring in those people that will support you through collaboration, as Susan said. And then you need to dedicate the time. And I'll pull in from something you said earlier too. Stay on message. Be that advocate. If you're in the space, you need to live it. I know some people are doing part-time, so that's fine. But bring that passion through. And I guarantee you, I felt it on Susan's and I first call immediately. Right? I'm like, oh, this is a different conversation. These are the conversations I enjoy, and you feel that right away from those types of people. And if you can bring that into yourself. You don't have to be a great salesperson, anything like that. If you're sharing your passion from your heart, sharing your vision, sharing what you want to see grow and how you want to help people, that's a great place to start. But Susan, amazing information today. Any final words, tips, or anything you want to share with the audience here?
Well, as you were saying, find the right people. I am trying to graduate all the right people that everyone else you're talking about will be hiring. So I guess if you are in the helping professions, then you need to be asking more of the job candidates that you see. What is their commitment to integrating a personal financial wellness piece into whatever it is that they'll be doing? And what are their qualifications for that? And what is the proof of their qualifications? What have they done? What have they earned? What do those certificates and credentials actually mean?
Definitely great points there. And Susan, any contact information? I know you have a LinkedIn. If you want to share any contact information where people get a hold of you and connect with you.
Well, sure. I'm Doty, SDOTY at uttyler.edu. Is probably the best way, but I'm also on LinkedIn, Susan Doty at UT Tyler. You'll find me there. I'm one of your friends, so they can come in through you and find me there. But I'd be happy to talk to anyone who is interested in starting a program at their university.
I appreciate your efforts, everything you're doing. I love your big plan vision, the bold, audacious plan. I love it. And let's see what we can do here together. I really am a big fan, a supporter of what you're doing. I think it's so needed in higher education. And I thank you for taking the time with me today.
Thank you for inviting me.